We are starting soon. It was a beautiful way, a beautiful interlude, a beautiful trip to Oslo, Norway, to Fargo, North Dakota, to Tokyo. And today here on Short Time in the Speakeasy, we've got the man, the myth, the legend, the Shutterbug wannabe sommelier himself, Tony Rotundo. Tony, we've spent a lot of time together over the last couple months. We've had 3 masterful trips, 3 great events of wrestling. And today, we're going to sit here and talk about it. Without any wine, without any beverages, although it is just past 1 o'clock here in the Central Time Zone, so it's very possible I could go into the Speakeasy fridge and get something out of here.
All right, you're welcome too.
Well, I should. It's my bar, but it's funny. I go back and look at when the last time you were on the show. Granted, we've been around each other for every event. It's pretty much like, okay, where are we going to find wine? Where are we going to find some craft beer? Where are we going to talk wrestling? Where are you going to process photos? What has Wi-Fi?
Yep.
But we've got. It's been a year since International Podcast Day, since you were last sitting in this chair in this situation. So welcome back to the Speakeasy and welcome back to Short Time.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It is one thing that's quite remarkable is the amount of flyer miles we've put in over the last couple months. For me, for Fargo, though, I can drive. It's 6 turns from my house. But let's just first of all start about the last couple months. What's it been like coming off of COVID? How you're getting back to shooting photography and wrestling and getting back into the grind of things. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, it has been a grind. I mean, 3 major events that happen pretty close to each other. It's been a lot of work, but it's been an honor and fun. It was my first Fargo ever, which is hard for even me to believe. I'm not exactly sure how I never made it happen before, but I probably won't miss another one. But that was shocking in terms of the amount of work and just the grind of that. And then prepping for the Olympics. The Olympics was an honor to shoot. It was exciting, but also a lot of work. And then the Worlds right after. It's been wonderful. Got a lot of good shots. The folks I root for have done pretty well in all 3 of those events. I've been enjoying it, but it's been a lot of hard work.
Yeah, Fargo, this is something it's been part of my calendar for almost, I think we're at 22, 23 years. Even the year we didn't go, I was still there. Granted, my nephew got married in Fargo, so technically I was outside of the dome and the turf. I've made that pretty much abundantly clear on social. But the first Fargo, this was not a thing that you competed in. Yet you did have a cadet silver back in the day. I believe it was, Missoula, Montana. I think you said you placed higher in the Empire State Games than you did the Cadet World Championships, or was it vice versa? I'm not quite sure.
It was more that the training, I wrestled Greco, and the training camp, basically there was only one other competitor from Columbia. So we trained for 2 weeks, and the coach it was 2 sessions a day, and everyone was exactly the same. And so it was super repetitive. And it was a little bit like wax on, wax off, like the Karate Kid. We didn't realize that he was developing these skills. So the match I had at the actual competition, I got arm throwed twice, and that was pretty much the end of the match. But a month later, I went to the Empire State Games and wrestled really well. And I got to, really use some of the techniques that I had learned at the camp before Cadet Worlds. I mean, at the time, it was more like just an international friendly, I would call it, right? It was like one mat, and there were kids from Colombia and Italy, but it wasn't like a full Cadet Worlds like we're seeing now.
But you are in the UWW database. Yeah, see if I can try that again. UWW database. You're in there.
Yeah, I had no idea I was in there. You were the one that found that. I didn't.
I don't even know why I looked for it. That's the one thing I'm wondering. And I realized that my light wasn't even on, so I get the bags under the eyes. But for those of you watching on video. But yeah, I don't know why. I just randomly searched it. I don't know if you said I wrestled in something one day, and I just wonder if it's in here. And boom, lo and behold, there it is. Now, going into Fargo, we're in July here. We've got that to deal with. We've got Tokyo in August, and then we've got Oslo in October. So we go back to July. It seems like forever ago. But what were you expecting going in? I mean, you've seen your colleagues in photography shoot this thing for years, but what were your impressions going in, and what were your first thoughts when you looked out and go, holy crap, 25 plus mats?
Yeah, I went in with a lot of confidence that, I've done multiple mat tournaments before, US Open type stuff where you're kind of running around. So I went in a little cocky, but not just 25 mats, but the first day the start time was 7:30 in the morning, and that was just brutal. I mean, they were 14-hour days, not counting the social stuff afterwards. So it was
Social stuff? I don't know what you speak of.
it was a bit shocking, and just trying to track where the kids are that you want to shoot and get it moving around the floor and moving around between people, carrying gear. I have 3 cameras that I carry with big lenses, and so I yeah, it was definitely shocking. I think it's cool. I think it's something to be proud of, in terms of Fargo happening and it being as big as it is. Um, I think it's a neat tournament, but it is relentless. And the real mind twist is that you'll shoot a finals at something like 3 o'clock. There are no windows open, so your sense of day and night is skewed, and so you shoot these finals, and for most people that's the end of the day, and then you turn around and the juniors start up, like right after the cadet finals or whatever, and then you've got men, boys, girls. There are just so many divisions that shooting the finals and then having to turn around and do another 6 hours of work or whatever the timing is really will break your brain and power, your soul at least one day, right? Um,
Yeah, the spirit. Now, one thing that was a surprise is the start times. Usually, it was like 9, 9, 9, and then an 8:30. Well, now, I mean, we got earlier start times than ever because we didn't have the event last year, so people are showing up. It was also interesting is not a single cadet had wrestled in the tournament before. So you had nothing but first timers because the second year cadets, when it was canceled, they're now juniors. The first year cadets wouldn't have had a chance to wrestle in it last year. So now everybody was essentially wrestling in their first tournament. So they're going through it for the first time. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And we've got people that are coming out to it. As I've got all these updates popping up on my screen right now. Gotta love live video. You've got all these kids coming out there for the first time, not really knowing what to do, and coaches who it's like, what did we do 2 years ago? And then it's the biggest event we've ever had because they kind of opened it up. It's like, all right, well, we don't, how are you going to have qualifiers when some states are just coming back off a high school season, some states didn't. I mean, it was a bit of a madhouse just in terms of just total entries. I mean, biggest tournament it's ever been, and it's setting all sorts of records. So long
yeah.
days, and long nights.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of work. Took me a long time to get through. And normally, like if without that many mats, I kind of know who the kids are. I can figure it out. And with that many mats and that many kids, going through and processing and captioning correctly was a lot of work. And I'll shoot the match number just to remind me, but then having to go up and look that up. And then sometimes I'll accidentally shoot a Kanzi match, which I don't normally shoot. I mean, it will if it's a kid that I like or whatever, but um, it was a lot of work to caption as many matches as many kids as I could, right? So that you can then go to my website and search by your name, and if I've photographed you and I've captioned correctly, your name would come up as you could actually do right now. Jason Bryant is in the database there.
Yeah, we'll look that up. So, you've got them filed by day. I mean, you've got what I like about when, getting off topic a little bit about what you do with events is you get the arena shots and things of that nature. So we look at just the full scale of what this actually looks like, which we can go full screen on it.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the monstrosity that is the Fargo Dome. I mean, we're over in Oslo talking about American wrestling, and they're like, oh, we've got 4 mats out there, and then we show them something like Madison Square Garden at the NCAA championships, or then we show them this thing, and they're just like their jaws drop. It's crazy to think about that. Just this type of event gets run every year, and from a media perspective, I mean, when you attack something like this to shoot it, you say you carry 3 cameras around, but I mean, how much did your plan actually have to change once you got on the floor and be like, this ain't gonna work?
Well, yeah. fortunately, I have a fair amount of experience, so it's more about just adjusting and saying, what is working and what do I need to change. Staying out with you till 2 a.m. was something I needed to change after the first
That
two
only
nights.
happened like I don't even know how many days that happened.
But no, it doesn't. It's just managing my expectations. Like I'm not going to be able to get to mat 25 from mat 1 in enough time to cover, this mat or that match. Um, and so you're just like, I just will not, I can't get there. Now to be full disclosure, there are a couple kids that I really, really was looking forward to shooting and watching wrestle. The two kids that I mentor, Jude Swisher and Sam Herring, who are of Home Mat Advantage, their own podcast. So once they started wrestling, I was really kind of focusing on them, and then the mats around, and then when they weren't wrestling, it's just sort of like, well, what mats have better light? What mats are compelling matchups? Once you get into the semifinals, then you want to shoot that. But the tricky thing there is that mat 1 is on a big riser, and mat whatever 7, that the other semifinals is down on the floor. And so trying to like bounce back and forth between and really get the matches that have the name recognition and the kids that I want to watch and shoot. So yeah, it's just a lot of movement. You're not sedentary at all. You just have to keep moving around. And then maybe only bring in 2 cameras. And I mean, I will often leave one camera near a mat and just go shoot a couple, one match and then come back and grab the camera, which I don't know, is a lot of trust, but I don't think anybody's going to steal my cameras at an event like that.
Well, you could get the Sandy speech if somebody does, because that's one thing that's been iconic with Fargo is the Sandy speeches of don't climb over the railings. The Don Blasingame speech, he hasn't announced it in probably 15 years at this point. The don't sit in the maroon seats, and then we do not steal, which is one of Sandy's calling cards. Is like when somebody yanks a bag or a single. It's the we do not want you in our sports speech, and nobody wants to hear that because that is the wrath of Sandy and Fargo. It is like that's all encompassing to get the full experience as you get.
Yeah.
We're asking you not to climb over the rails. We don't want to hear that speech, but sometimes you do. And then, and of course, the maroon seats announcement. It used to be flies, man. They used to have the doors open. And the flies would be everywhere, and you just say the fly swatter is just crazy. So Fargo's got all sorts of nuances to it. Now, other things that I've discovered about Fargo over the years. Of course, you alluded to the hours that one keeps. This has become more of a marketing trip for me, where I'm doing some interviews and such, and it is a grind to cover this thing. And thankfully, since the advent of technology, there's no more pairs bringing up those gigantic long bout sheets and vertical pairing that you have to go sort through. I used to have Team Virginia coaches coming over. All right, we're on listening to the announcements. Okay, we're on 18, 17, and 12. And as a photographer, I can imagine what that would be like back then. But even just trying to get to the mats to find your kids when you hear it, write it down, go get the results just for one state, it was a bit of a mess. So we've had Track and now Flow with their technology make things getting text updates. I mean, you talked about Sam and Jude. I mean, I was watching Pat Tossi's kids, Marco and Nico, every match that they were wrestling that I could before I had to leave early. And it was just like, it's so much easier to track now, but it's still much bigger, and it's such a monstrosity. But back to the socializing thing. This is where I joke that I've met everybody in wrestling. I mean, save you. I didn't meet you in Fargo because it was your first time there, but there is a lot of interaction with people that you may have just seen their name on Twitter or interacted with, or we're having dinner and a guy goes, "Oh, you're Tony Rotundo." I mean, you're a rock star. And we go, "Oh, you're Jason Brown." But you're Tony Rotundo. I mean, what's it like to get the chance to meet some of those fans and that?
It's
that
awesome.
type of perspective.
It's awesome. I love it. That's why I do it. I mean, that's the feedback that I need to keep going, right? I mean, I do it. I do this as a labor of love and to give back to the sport, and I happen to be good at it, I think. And so meeting people and getting that kind of feedback is thrilling and really is awesome. And if it's interesting. I never really liked trade shows. I've been in the tech industry for a long time, and I never really like trade shows, but this is like, I love networking. I mean, I will start talking to anybody if, whether they're wrestlers or not, fans, whatever. And I believe in my product. And so, and the product being photography. And so I'll pick up a conversation with the grandfather and they'll say, "Oh, I've never heard of you before." And then I'll say, "Well, who's your kid?" And then I'll go on my phone and look up their kid. And, you know, 7 times out of 10, it's like I've got a photo of their kid, maybe from that day. And then they go, "Oh, wow. What's your website?" And get my information and stuff. And you've got a new friend, or a new fan. And, yeah, that it's awesome. It's totally awesome. And so, yeah, it really keeps me going. I appreciate it a lot.
We did have a quick turnaround because we both of us did this, and there's not too many people. I think we tried to figure out how many people actually did Fargo-Tokyo-Oslo. There aren't very many. But we had to go. I actually had to leave early. My daughter got sick, so I was a day and a half earlier. Didn't have a chance to check out the 50th anniversary celebration that they had, which was a cool thing because last year was supposed to be the 50th of the junior nationals, so they had to push that back. So you had people that were some of the first timers that were there, people that have been involved in almost every single one of them, or over 25 years, I think is the benchmark that they used. I know Sandy, we mentioned her; she's announced all but one of them. So she jokes that she started when she was 4. But we get to the next step was Tokyo. So coming off of Tokyo, there were a lot of hurdles everybody had to jump through. Those of us that were allowed to go, we were fortunate enough to work it in our various capacities, but it was like getting jabbed up the nose, stabbed in the head. And I mean, I think I had three COVID tests to get in the country. What was it like for you to get in from San Francisco?
Well, it was, tedious. Right, as you said, we had to get a COVID test 72 hours out just to then get a second COVID test within 48 hours, 48 hours of leaving, I think it was, and then a third COVID test in the airport. I mean, it's the Olympics, so it's like, what wouldn't you do for the Olympics, right? So, you just suck it up and get the test done. For me, I didn't even know if I was going for, till pretty late in the process. I didn't have a credential years ago. I mean, normally the process is you apply 2 years out, and then about a year out, you start getting, you getting confirmation, and then credentials start rolling in. And so I wasn't confirmed for a long time. So I was a little bit nervous, but it came through. And then I'm like, well, I'll do whatever you need me to do, to get there. So it's inconvenient, but I didn't think it was that bad. Now, it was definitely a different type of Olympics. I mean, we weren't really allowed to socialize. So we literally went from, we were in a media hotel, or I was in the UWW hotel. You were in a different hotel, but for me, there was a walkway from the hotel to the arena. So I never deviated from that ever. I ate in the hotel and I shot in the arena and just spent all my time. I never socialized outside of that. I did take a bus ride down to the main media center because I had to get my vest. So that was the only thing that I did that was like outside the arena or the hotel. So that's a little bit weird. It didn't really feel like the Olympics in that regard. No fans, or just the teammates as fans uh, was kind of a bummer. But the teammates, the really cool thing, and I don't know if other teams did this, but the U.S. team, they all stayed, um, to watch their teammates. So the women's team stayed, the men's, or whatever the order was. And that was really cool to see because they made a lot of noise. And so it's rare for every person who's usually in the warm-up area, including the trainers and the coaches, everyone came out into the stands and made a lot of noise. They were like Iranian fan style noisemakers by the US team, which was pretty cool.
The dance parties were also quite popular amongst the training partners, even the athletes. I know once Adeline was done, for example, her and her sister Geneva, who was her training partner, up there just all over the dance cam. We could see
right,
the Brad Harper, right, and one of the liaisons from the State Department were out there just getting down. I mean, it was like a dance off with some Italian women's wrestlers on the screen. So I mean, that didn't involve the actual competition, but it provided a little bit of normalcy in terms of, when you go to an arena in a stadium. I mean, it was probably a 9,000 seat stadium based on how it was built. And, wasn't full, and it was, but
Yeah.
we still created some atmosphere. Now, when it comes
Yeah.
to shooting the games, you shot in Rio, you shot in Tokyo. Obviously, the delay being what it was, it provided, it was different. We saw things, but we also saw some amazing performances. Of course, Yazdani and Taylor was a crazy match. Gable's late heroics was crazy. Tamir Mensah-Stock becoming a media darling. So
Mhm.
when you put things into perspective as being an American shooting this for as impartial media as you're supposed to be, but there's that like that inner fist pump we all have when our friends win and people that we've gotten to know over the years. And for me, my great moment is being able to say, "Please rise" for the national anthem of the United States of America. What is your great moment as a photographer?
Well, capturing it and then being able to present those photos to the athletes. But interestingly, starting at the Olympics, and I don't know how long this will carry for, but because there weren't fans, the athletes would walk around to this thing. It was a video link, and so parents or fans could join the video call, so like a Zoom call, and they had a big TV, and the athletes would go over and be able to see their family and wave to them and stuff. But the athletes would then, they hug their coaches, then they might wave to their family, and then I'm standing there and giving them a big hug, and that became really important and special to me. And then that happened a couple times at the Worlds as well. In fact, Adeline, um, Adeline came off the mat, and I don't want to throw myself at them, and if you know what I mean, like but I'll stand there and I'll be like, "Hey, I'm really proud of you," and then kind of be like, "Yeah, give me a big hug." And Adeline like hugged me for the longest time, but she's like, "Since my dad isn't here, I'm gonna give you a longer hug," and that was just really, that was cool. Um, at the Olympics, there was this kind of like chute behind the stands, behind where you were sitting, and they would come down that chute before they got to the media or even USA Wrestling staff. And that's where I was photographing it, and then I'd stop photographing, and they would walk kind of right into me, and that became really, really special. Tamira was like, "Sorry, I'm sweating on you," and I'm like, "Are you kidding? This is like the best thing ever." And as you said, I'm friends with all of these wrestlers, so that became really special, and I don't know if I'll have a chance to do that again. But I was certainly taking advantage of it and really enjoying that moment.
Yeah, as far as I know, unlike UWW officials who no longer get to officiate World and Olympic Championships when they turn 60, you've still got plenty of room to go, and there's no photography retirement age.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I'm going to keep going for a while. It's just access, being on the floor. Who knows? Who knows if I'll get to the next Olympics? Who knows if I'll be on the floor for the next Worlds? I mean, the point being that one thing I've learned, I mean, it's common knowledge. It's like appreciate the things that you have when you have them, right? Don't be like, oh well, I'm hugging them now, and I'll get to hug them every Worlds. That might not be the case. So, it became very special to me. I hope it wasn't awkward for them. I don't think it was. I certainly didn't make it awkward. They could have just walked past me, and I didn't really do it for anyone who wasn't in a very jovial state. And like, I didn't hug Dake. He's not. But I did hug David, because David and I have known each other for a long time. And I mean, I photographed David when he was a freshman in high school. So
Way back in the Iron Man,
yeah, exactly. Which I'm going
which
back to.
understand you're going back to this year.
Going back, yeah, I'd
I
look
may
like,
be as well, so I haven't been since like '07 or '08. It's been a while.
yeah, not '07. Oh, yeah, I have a photo of you there in
Yeah,
'07.
I'm interviewing, I think, Boris Novachkov.
That's right, that's
I
right.
am rather rotund in
Ah,
that area. You're rotundo. I'm rather rotund, but yeah. So
yeah,
we can get on to the what's coming up next. But so we've got the Olympics, and so when the processing time comes around,
yeah.
you've got Fargo, which had been basically right before. You go home, you grab another bag, you go to Tokyo. When you come down to process Fargo and the Olympics, I mean, there's obviously you're going to do the Olympic stuff first, but when do you how do you prioritize your shots when you have back-to-back events like this?
Well, I wanted to get as much of Fargo done as I could before the Olympics, and I almost finished it. I had 2 sets that I had to cover and complete when I got back, which had to wait until after the Olympics. So the Olympics would trump everything, and then a Worlds would trump the Fargo, and but I had I don't remember the timing, but I had maybe 3 weeks, and I just grinded. I mean, it's not my day job, but I'll work late into the night, most nights, as I'm doing right now with the world stuff. And so, it's a long, tedious process. There aren't a lot of people doing it, to the extent that I'm doing it, where it's going through thousands of photos per set, whittling them down to hundreds. So it might be 4,000, whittle it down to 250, then captioning them, like I said before. So you have to look up who was wrestling and, cut and paste that, and then actually process the raw files, to make them look good. And so that whole thing could take, a day and a half per set. And, so prelims, semis, finals. Um, so you're talking about potentially three or 4 days per day of shooting. In a best case scenario, it depends on my workload with my work, and I manage a property, and I have a wife and 2 dogs, and, so I have other obligations. So it's a long, tedious process, but the, uh, you know, this is the job. The way I look at it, it's like embrace the grind, right? It's getting up in the morning and doing, getting something done. Starting, right after work ends, and just, working to dinner, eat dinner, work after dinner, wife goes to bed, I'm going to work. It's just a lot of work. But I believe in my product. I believe in what I'm doing. I don't put bad photos out. So everything gets a little bit of love. Every photo gets a little bit of love, right? So it's a lot of love, I guess. Yeah.
One thing you talked about putting out bad photos, and over the years you've gone through, and for those who don't know, Tony texts me pretty frequently during the week. I mean, if it's not every day, but it's a couple times a week with a photo. Now he's going and labeling the referees from Fargo, and going back through old galleries to, like, okay, let me redo this. So one, why do you go back through the older stuff? What do you do to that? And why is it important for you to label people like the referees?
Yeah, well, it's like labeling everyone. I label you, I label Sandy, I'd label coaches. Again, it's like what I see myself as a historian as much as a photographer, right? So, um, hopefully the website stays up for a very long time, which is something that I've been thinking a lot about, how to keep a website going for 50 years,
Yeah,
or
how do you
even after
future
you die.
proof something that you don't really know? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
even looking back at, like, I first started the website in 1997. I mean,
Yeah.
the technology there is still there, but it's not there.
Yeah. But I'm going back for 2 reasons. The first 5 years that I shot, I didn't have my own website. I was shooting with John Sachs, and they would go up on his website, and they were like tiny images, and the labeling and captioning was just text in an HTML document, so not even tethered to the photo itself. So there's a lot of old content that is not on. So now, and then in, I don't know, 4 years ago, I moved everything over to SmugMug. And so you have the stuff that was on John's site, you have the stuff that was on my old site that nobody goes to, and now SmugMug. So I'm trying to move as much as I can over to SmugMug. And so I'm going back and shooting, say, like old NCAA tournaments. So now all NCAA tournaments are captioned correctly and on my SmugMug site. And invariably, when I go into those old files to caption them correctly, I'll be like, well, this photo could get touched up a little bit, and then wind up reprocessing all of the NCAA tournament from like 2009. And that was what I did during COVID. My wife thought I was insane, because she's like, how could you still have so much work? And I'm like, well, first of all, it's a finite amount, so it can't go on forever. And second of all, I wanna update photos. They're good photos, they don't look great, and they're not on my website where you can search by name. You could search. Now, if you search Jordan Burroughs, you get all of his college stuff that I shot, and then all of the open senior stuff. So it's just, being that historian and being that thorough and caring, about, like, I've got all this great content that no one's seen, or they haven't seen in years. And so I want to pull it over to my SmugMug site.
I'm just sitting there when I play around with photos. I mean, I've got a couple cameras. I got a 60D I shoot with. It's Canon. I got a couple, mirrorless cameras that I'm using for webcams, like this guy here, that I just got from got some buddies. So I can deck out the speakeasy with appropriate cameras. But I'll just sit there and be playing with Lightroom, and I'll be like, just the little tweaks you can do to make
Yep.
what the normal human thinks is that looks like a good shot, to be like, oh, that's awesome. I mean, when that unfolds before your eyes, I mean, you giggle a little bit. It's like, ooh, that's looking good.
Yeah, I do. That gives me, that keeps you going, right? And so there's a lot of artistry to it, right? So you got to be at a tournament, you got to be at the mat, you got to, you got to have the right gear, you've got to fire at the right time, but then the art starts, right? So um what you do to a photo, how you manipulate it, how you tweak it, um is important, and you build a style or a voice, as it were. And you may not even intentionally do that. I mean, people are like, oh, I recognize your photos versus the other shooters. um and I think they like, the saturation is good and the contrast is good, and again, I really don't put out anything bad. If it's blurry or not a good shot, I'll toss it. So I take pride in that craft of the artistry of photo processing, and yeah, it's important to me. And I'll go back, like, the light conditions that I process in will affect at times the photos. So I might process quickly in an Italian restaurant, with you guys at a lunch break, and then I'll come back home and I'll be like, oh, those are all too orange or too blue or whatever. And I'll go back and redo it, because it's that important to me, right? Um, it sucks to have to do that. I'll do it, for sure. Or this happens a lot. The first day of a tournament, I'll process to a certain, what I think is good, but then over the course of the next 8 days, I'll be like, oh, if I just tweak the red slider just a little bit, or I tweak this slider or that slider just a little bit, the shots are coming out better. And so that's when, by the ninth day, I've got it dialed in better. So I'll go back and reprocess day 1 and 2, or up until I've kind of figured some of those things out. So yeah, it happens. That actually is happening right now with Worlds. I've finished the first 2 days, full sets of the first 2 days, and had to kind of redo it a little bit. But for me, skin tone is the most important thing. And this kind of gets to, like, if I'll cry if I walk into an arena, like a high school gym or something, and it's just like, oh, and they have a red mat. Red mats are just the bane of my existence, right? Because I'll know that it's going to take me twice the amount of time to get that to look good, versus really good light and, say, a blue mat or a white mat. So,
Well, why is that? That's one thing that I was okay. So why would it take any longer? Is it just, I mean,
because yeah, the light reflects off the mat, and then so that red light will, so then you have, in most cases, you have like a white to, our skin tones are wonky, right? And then people get flushed in the face as they're wrestling, and so you're just talking about flooding an already somewhat red face, with white athletes, at least, with more red. And so trying to then adjust that to a natural looking skin tone is extremely difficult. And so it just takes more time. If it's a particularly good photo, I'll even go in and do some touch-ups, like, on their face to lighten it, and then get the color correct. But yeah, it's a lot of work. And yeah, like Stanford, their dual meets are in this old gym that has orange wooden bleachers everywhere, and then red brick, and then they'll wrestle on a red or black mat, and it's just like, oh gosh, this is just painful to go through, and have to really work hard at least a dual meet, which is a set of 250 shots, but it'll take me a while to get them right.
Yeah, so we've got UWW mats are dark blue, purplish hue, if you will, with the orange zone, and then, like, at the Olympic trials, we had a white mat with a gray zone and a blue protection area. So I mean, I guess
Guess who came up with that?
you
Or
did. That's why that's where I'm getting to is why is the white the best shot? Why is that mat at the Olympic trials better than say the darker mat, which looks good on television?
Yeah, well, technically, I think gray might be the absolute best color, like a light gray. But white, it's again, it comes down to reflective light. And so, if you're shooting without a flash, right? And so then, let's say you have two people who are head to head, right, and they're collar tie, right? You on a white mat, all this light is going to bounce off the white mat and come up and fill the dark areas of like where their heads are, right? The darker mat you have, the less fill light you're going to get that's reflected off of the mat itself. So that's why I was suggesting to USA Wrestling. I mean, this is a big deal for me that they called and said, "Hey, we're designing the Olympic mats or the Olympic trial mats, and we'd like to get your opinion on what you think." And my thing was like anything but red. Even that out of bounds area or the caution circle, like, because they were thinking, kind of a red, white, and blue motif with like white and then red and then blue. And I was like, I'll do anything if you don't, because you go from white and then they get over the red area or the blue area, and it's just like the color completely changes, and very difficult to process those shots and have them look good. Yeah.
All right, switching gears, we were talking about the mats there. The mats we had in Oslo were the traditional UWW kind of purplish orange, but Oslo, I mean, we actually got to interact. We weren't, in Tokyo, you were in the APA. I was at a hotel. It wasn't, I mean, I could see your hotel from mine out the window. It was weird. It's like, because we were joking that me, you, and Taylor Miller were all, like, we were all in close proximity to each other, but we couldn't see each other. The only time I saw anybody was the very, very last night before I left is the Team USA social, and they were actually not even in the village. They were in the hotel, like literally, 20 meters away from me. And it's like I got to walk 200 meters. And actually, I was supposed to take a car 2 kilometers around the block until somebody else needed the car, and then they said, "Okay, you can walk." So I'm walking outside. I got tested probably 6-7 times there. But we get to Oslo. A week before we get there, first of all, we have to go through some hurdles to get through, although they only need an antigen test to get in. Although certain America, we had to be on a list to get in. That was the biggest thing, is trying to fight through the Delta Gate agent, in my case, oh, no, we're on a list for this event. We can get there. We're allowed to be here, because they didn't allow Americans in for tourism purposes. It had to be a specific reason. And we get there, and a week before we get there, they just, I mean, I don't want to get into a mask situation debate here, but it was weird to go there. All the masks are gone. I mean, we were the only ones wearing masks. We're basically us. It was just like really strange. Like, wow, it's like nothing ever changed here. And that first Saturday night we were there, the place was a madhouse.
Yeah, it was. It was like New Year's every weekend. They were really excited to, I mean, they did a lot of, it was hard work, right? They sacrificed and got their numbers to a point where they felt comfortable, with no mask mandate. And we happened to arrive about a week after that. So, yeah.
It was strange. I mean, we were still masking up in the tight proximities and places, and then we had some space and we were just around us. Just full disclosure, people, it's one of those things. Like we're still like, woohoo!
We were getting tested daily, so
yeah.
There was that. And granted, those tests aren't 100%, but they're pretty accurate. And so,
it's not like being on a strip or anything.
Right.
No.
Right. Well, being around each other, we were relatively safe. So because we were being tested so much.
It was like a real event. So Brian Hazard, I get to bring him over with me at the started in Nur Sultan, because when there's a 9-day event, even as somebody who talks a lot, because people know I talk a lot. If you've watched any of these shows or listened to any of my shoys for years, I talk a lot. I get paid to talk. Well, when you're paid to talk for 9 days, the voice doesn't always hold up. So in Budapest, it was like by day 4, I was like, "No, Russ," I was just trying to save something for the end. And oddly enough, there was Greco at the end, because the Hungarians love the Greco just like the Norwegians do. And so they had basically a 3-man group of us, me and Hazard, announcing. He actually got called into duty to do the broadcast for freestyle, which he was going to do. And then I think Alina Fakin got sick. Yes, I can say that on the radio. And then Mark Madsen was supposed to also do Greco. And so Hazard got thrown into emergency duty as a color commentator with Sean Kenny, who ended up being part of our little crew there that we walked around. I mean, some days Tony, why did we walk to the venue? It's a 50-minute walk. Oh wait, it was delightful.
It was awesome because Oslo is beautiful, and it wasn't raining that day.
But it rained every day.
Rained
It's like
just about every
Central
day.
Florida, but the entire time.
Yeah, and to get some exercise because exercise is good.
I think I had a 15,000 step day one day, the day we walked. Well, the day I walked. I walked back once and to there once. One day I was like, you know what? I don't need to be there. I didn't have to work the morning session as much. So I got in a cab, and then there's Tony just power walking up this. You look like a mall walker with the headphones on, like ready to go, going up that hill, that last stretch there. But Oslo, it was cool. I mean, a lot of fish. I thought UWW did a great job. I thought the Norwegian Federation did an amazing job in hosting us. They had a guy named Hans who was kind of like an MC down on the floor, like we had in Paris. We also had them in Budapest. But I thought the Norwegians did a great job at putting it on. And UWW has gotten this to the point where they're really got a team together. They've got the production team. They've got, of course, the announcing team. They've got the media team, which we had a great dinner. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's like they have got this down to a science, and it's like it's going to be pretty much the same every time out, which is refreshing, having gone through what was Tashkent in 2014.
Yeah, I think that 2013. This is a product of 2013. And almost being eliminated from the Olympics as a sport. I think they did some soul searching and were like, hey, we need a better product. We need to learn how to produce the product. And we need media teams. We need announcing teams. We need all of this stuff. And they built out the infrastructure to do it. And now they have playbooks, and they execute those playbooks. I'm sure there are areas and room for improvement, areas that I'm not involved in. But I think that they've come a real long way, and I think the product is pretty dang good at this point, for sure.
Yeah, one thing that we added, or they added rather, in that case, because in the Olympics I wasn't part of the UWW team. I was with Dentsu, which was hired by Great Big Events, which was organizing committee type stuff, and the referee jury of appeal, Antonio Silvestri and his crew there. They are actually explaining the call in a review situation, and the amount of transparency that adds, and the amount of clarity that adds to what did they see, and it's over the PA system. They hear it, they're mic'd up, they've got the videos, they've got it right there, and they're talking to the fans, they're talking to the wrestlers. Now that doesn't mean everybody's going to ever agree with everything, or they might disagree with the call, but it's just that much more of a real good spectator environment. Be like, okay, I don't know what's going on. Oh, they just told me what's going on. Yep. It's pretty freaking cool.
It's very cool. I think that the NCAA should adopt it for sure. Explaining, Silvestri doesn't like what happens is there will be a review, and then the review committee will have multiple camera angles, and they'll be able to dial frame by frame. They'll confer, and then Mr. Silvestri will pick up a microphone and he'll say, challenge on mat B.
He'll say because he's an Italian German, so he says
and he'll give depending. I mean, sometimes he'll say something like there was one instance where the whistle was blown prematurely, right? And so they were kind of going out of bounds, and there would have been continuation, and there would have been points scored, but the official blew the whistle, and they knew that because the officials, kind of do this with their arms. They don't have audio. We did confer that, but he said Red would have scored 4 points on continuation. However, the official blew the whistle, and so no points. And
inadvertent whistle happens in every sport,
sadly, and that official never came back for the next 2 days, but which is sad. But it's the kind of thing where it's like it's probably hard for him to have to say that into a microphone, but it's really cool that they're doing that. It's a big step forward, I think, for transparency of the officiating, for sure.
What were some of the coolest things that I mean, we were pretty much in the same spots. We found a cool little Italian joint. But from your perspective, what do you think some of the coolest things about Oslo were, whether it be wrestling or about the city itself?
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, it's an expensive city, and it's there's
Very.
pretty high taxing, but but they're putting that money towards it's just a very beautiful, clean city. The people are incredibly friendly and nice. Like even in crowded gatherings, if you bump into somebody, it's just all apologies and that sort of thing. So just
It'll be in
really, really nice
Norwegian
people.
first, and then you look at them funny, and then they'll say it in English.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's like
Um,
English. Oh yeah, sorry, hello.
Yeah, yeah. The people are great, and it's beautiful. I mean, really to get to explore properly. It's like the walk to the arena, that kind of thing. There were ferry ride trips out to the fjords and stuff that we didn't get a chance to do, just because there wasn't enough time. So
Yeah,
I'd
one
like
of
to go
those
back.
things where you wake up, it's like, do I sleep in because I
Mhm.
need the sleep because these are long days, or or I'll go on a ferry?
Yeah,
Sean Kenny was with us again. He did a great job on the broadcast. He was like, yeah, I did some fjords, and he's the one that found our little Irish pub. Because which ended
right.
up being like one of the gems of the trip too.
Yeah,
The Irish guy making fun of the Norwegians singing American rock and roll.
yeah. That was fun.
Welcome to Europe.
Yeah, totally. It was a good time for sure.
We haven't even
Yeah.
really talked much about the team performances, but again, because
Mm.
everybody you can talk to, you're blue in the face about how good Team USA did. What did we do wrong here or there? I just like to focus on the things that if you're going to go to one of these events, or if you're thinking about going to a world championship, or when we can go back to the Olympics or go to a world team trials, the quality of athlete on display across all walks of life is remarkable. I mean, we saw the retirement of Stig Andre Birge of Norway. He was an Olympic medalist, huge national hero there. Brought his son out on the mat. It was a real moving experience. A lot of people were like, it's just you're catching the feels. You're like, I've never met the guy, and it's just like I'm good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dusty. It
and
gets
then you
dusty
see.
sometimes.
And then you had a Japanese wrestler retire. You had a Moroccan just come out there. I mean, it's just the reverence. And then officials. I mean, there was a pretty good response for those officials that again, we alluded to it earlier, that you can't referee at the World Championships beyond the age of 60. Some people, Tim Pearson from the United States had a chance to ref his first World Championship. And we had American referees who were ranked higher stepped away to give guys like Tim a chance to at least do a World Championship. He got his one and only shot, and he got a nice send off like some of the seasoned veterans did. So it was pretty cool to see even those, because they're not full time salaried on this type of thing too. They're taking time off of work wherever they're from, and Tim's a Virginia guy, so I'm going to give him a little plug there. But just seeing all the retirements, it's a special thing. I mean, there really is a reverence to the sport that
Mhm.
which you really do see on another level when you go see it overseas.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's an honor to be there, and it is a lot of fun, and yeah, gets very emotional, for sure. I photographed him. He walked off the Sir, what's his name?
Stig Andre Berge,
Yeah, that.
that guy, Stiga,
Stieg,
the
came off the
Norwegian
mat with
dude who
his
retired. How about that?
right. They came off the mat with his son and is walking along the mats, and I'm shooting it, and he's crying. And the cool thing is, I mentioned this to you or someone, that the son was, he was probably 3, and he didn't realize what was going on, I don't think. And here's you have one generation, the father who's retiring, who's crying, and you have this kid who's just sucking his thumb and watching his dad, and doesn't realize, like, will probably wrestle, maybe not, but it's like his whole life ahead of him, and then the father who's retiring from the sport that he loves, that he's done his whole life. I thought that was really touching. Yeah, it's neat. It
It
was
was.
there were a lot of emotions running at this, particularly because of COVID and everything. Like, um, yeah, people getting back to the sport they love.
Yeah, and this guy had an opportunity to retire. I mean, Stig was from Oslo. I mean, he's
Mhm.
retiring in his hometown. Not many wrestlers will have that opportunity ever in the world. Now,
Yeah, for sure.
we move forward. We're going in college seasons. Practice has
Mhm.
started. Granted, the California community colleges have been wrestling for a couple of weeks now. obviously often the forgotten college system, but you've had a chance to shoot some of those guys out there over the years, and then we have practice starting with all of our 4-year, and then our NJCAA teams are starting up. I mean, as we get back to normalcy to a point, we're still probably going to have, guys have to miss matches because of positives and such like that, but we look at the college wrestling season as it's upcoming. I did a little video the other day of the 13 weekends as of now that I know that I'm going to be on the road, which means we've got work, we've got wrestling, we've got busyness, we got stuff to talk about. So what are you most looking forward to getting back for the college and high school season?
Stanford.
Yes,
because,
absolutely.
I'm super excited about that program. I live in San Francisco, and so Stanford is 40 minutes away from me. So it's my school, my D1 school. And so I was weeping when the program was going to be dropped, and then as rejoiceful as you could be when it was reinstated. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Rob and Vincenzo and Enoch do there. And kind of, there are a number of people who photograph them, but it's my D1 school for sure. CKLV tournaments, just getting back to college tournaments. So I'll be in Vegas shooting that. Hopefully Yanni, goes. Hopefully Gable goes. Who knows if Gable's going to wrestle there. He might be a second semester. He might be taking some time off. I'm not sure what his plan is in terms of the first semester. But high school tournaments, Doc B, Ironman would be great. But I guess overall, just getting back into it, right? After having it be delayed for a year. At least a year, right? I guess it was one full year for high school, really. So
Yeah, a lot of
seeing the kids, seeing the coaches, these are all friends of mine. So just kind of getting back into the grind of it, getting some good shots. It is interesting, I'm pushed to work incredibly hard shooting for UWW, and I embrace that. It's the job. But I was thinking about this morning that, like, when I shoot on my own for my own thing, so like CKLV, it's like if you're pushed that hard, then you go do it's kind of like running with a weighted belt or a weighted backpack or whatever, and then you go run without that. You're like, hey, this is a lot easier. So having to grind that hard shooting at Worlds and then doing a 2-day at CKLV or something, or a high school tournament is like, oh, this is nice. This is nice. Like this, I could do this, every weekend. And getting
carry
the
3 or
shots
4 of
quick.
these,
Yeah, exactly. Or like Fargo, like I don't have to run across the Fargo Dome, 400 times in a day carrying gear. So yeah, I'm looking forward to some of those and getting some great shots and getting them out quick. And yeah, just doing what I do.
Wrapping things up, we'll go back to Fargo just a little bit. Speaking of the photography world, we lost one of our media friends, photographer Wyatt Schultz, passed away, I believe, August 21st, if I'm not mistaken. And he was, last time a lot of us saw him was in Fargo.
Mm-hmm.
For years in Fargo, obviously with your first Fargo, you didn't get to experience the entirety of Wyatt's Easy Cheese and his Oreos. And, he would bring pallets of this stuff. I mean, he drove a truck, so he had a lot of weird Oreos and snack foods that he would always bring, like, JB, got you some Oreos, and a big old smile. Like, where did you get these mint candy cane? It's just, he was always, he'd always have the predicament pens. He'd be out there shooting. I remember spending a New Year's Eve with his wife at the Clash, but Fargo's really where I got to know Wyatt over the years. And then we've seen him at wrestling events, a guy that's, again, like you, it wasn't his first primary way of doing things. There's a job that finances the whole wrestling hobby, and Wyatt was a character and cared a lot about the sport. So, what are we going to miss about Wyatt from your perspective?
Yeah, well, he had a great sense of humor, and I never got to experience the snacks. He didn't bring those to every tournament. I think it was probably just Fargo. And I
spent 9 days in Fargo. You're going to need something other than Buffalo Wild Wings. So he supplied that.
That's
Yes.
true. Yeah. Just the camaraderie, and we as photographers, you don't get to spend as much time together, and then you might be seated or standing in a different area. So we didn't spend a lot of time together, but I appreciated the time that I did get with him. He's a good dude, and he was passionate about it. He loved the sport, and that came through. Just getting to events and photography, his photography and stuff. I mean, he loved it, and you could see that in his work.
That'll wrap up this particular episode of Short Time. We're going to tell you to check out the site right here. If I can do the little graphics, I'm still working on the whole, we
Oh, look
finally
at
got the
it.
video situated here. WrestlersAreWarriors.com. You can go right there. We had it up on the screen earlier. You go search yourself, search your kids, search your grandkids, search your if you're a referee. Yeah. You want to see where you're at, and you're down there making the swipes, whether it be on the folk style or doing the two on the freestyle. You're there. Tony's been diligent with it, and I've got the screenshots from his computer to prove it on the phone. And if I don't know him, I'm texting Sammy Julian. And so I think we're 100 for 150 for 150 in identifying officials throughout the past. At least at this point, I know there were some 2006 NCAA championships in there that you were going. I was like, I remember that guy. Wait, that's
Yeah.
Fred Ambrose. We know that one.
Mhm.
So that's the fun part about it. But Tony,
Dave Hickson.
what's one thing that you can pitch to them? Where can they find you on social media? You're doing the stuff on the Instas of the Grams and the socials and whatnot. So if they're not familiar with where you can already find Tony Rotundo and Wrestlers or Warriors, where can they do that?
Well, they can, it's wrestlersarewarriors.com is the main website. On Twitter, I think it's Tony Rotundo. On Facebook, it's Tony C. Rotundo. And on Instagram, it's tonyrotundo.waw, which stands for Wrestlers Are Warriors. And yeah, reach out if you need anything or you like what you're seeing. I really appreciate the feedback. It keeps me going.
All right, thanks Tony for chiming in. We've had a good hour discuss. I mean, that just scratches the surface, but there's stories that we're going to have and share. If you're going to find us at a tournament and you want to ask us some questions, I'm sure we can fill you in on some of the things, including why an entire Irish bar in Oslo was singing Country Roads.
Yep.
I think that's the best play to end it. So for Tony Rotundo, I'm Jason Bryant. Thanks for jumping into the Speakeasy here on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast.
See ya.